I stretch my constantly tired body, feeling only half aware as I stumble out of my bed and groggily stumble to my door before opening it and standing there thinking for a moment. Then without any precursor I turn around and once again shut the door before heading towards a different door in my room. This time I open the door and walk through it before finding myself in my bathroom. Then I do what most people do in the bathroom every morning. Go to the toilet, do my teeth, wash my face, etc., etc. Once I'm done, I do the exact thing I did a few minutes ago, but this time with less stumbling. Still completely groggy though, I once again open the door, and this time, I don't just stand there like an idiot. I exit through the other side of the door. I don't even bother to take in my surroundings as I head towards one of the 3 doors in this room. Once through the door, I find myself in a tiled room with a marble counter on the left. On said counter, the only thing I take notice of is the box-looking thing with a handle on a glass-like door on its front. Next to the handle is a panel of sorts that appears to be hanging off the side of the box and has a number of different buttons on it. I press one of said buttons and the box flashes with an orange light before making one of those odd dinging sounds you find in video games. Once it does, I open the glass door and grab the item inside. In my hands now is a pleasantly warm and pleasantly brown piece of toast. Well, 2 of them. I can barely count at the moment, okay? Grumbling to myself the whole time that feline-kin really shouldn't have to be awake during the day, I walk groggily over to the door I just came through and go back into what I'm going to be calling the base room. Essentially, it just connects all the rooms in our little bunker house. In the middle of this base room is a table and chairs. Nothing special about them, just an average wooden table with average cushion chairs. Well, actually, if we're talking about across the whole universe, this is a little more primitive than average, but if you're talking on this planet, we're actually fairly well off with this setup. As I go to sit down, I lazily acknowledge that despite there only being 2 people in this house at the moment, there are 4 chairs around the table, a fact that bugs me to no end. I mean, even when that man's home, there's still only 3 people in this house. I know the 4th one is for guests, but who would come to the house of some primitive soldier that deserves this level of preparation? I mean, come on. I absent-mindedly chew on my toast for a little while before realizing that it's just toast with nothing on it. Oh, is all the reaction I can muster as I realize that I have in fact been chewing on what is essentially dry cooked bread this entire time. Regardless, now that I realize that fact, I can't very well go on chewing it like some kind of squirrel. That would be barbaric, and Mum wouldn't like that. So I put my toast back on the table and take a stab at getting up. I fail, of course, and end up slinking further into my seat, but I think to myself I should really get up or I'll get nowhere, so I make another attempt which also ends in failure. Sick of this nonsense, I push myself off the chair with a little too much force and end up knocking the chair over behind me. It makes a light pump noise as it touches the floor and bounces off it, though obviously it just lands on the same part of the floor in the end. Annoyed with the work I just created for myself, I stomp over to the door that I just came into this room from and once again march over to the marble counter. This time I ignore the food machine, which is not its actual name, but I currently can't be bothered to think of it. Instead, I head to the cupboard-looking thing on the other end of the counter. I open it and feel the rush of cool air in my face as I reach in and grab a tub of butter. Realizing it would have been less work if I just brought my toast with me, I once again get annoyed with myself before shrugging and walking back out the kitchen. Now back at the table with my toast, once more I swipe the knife across my toast with large amounts of butter. Honestly, I could have done this with a spoon. That's how much butter I like on my toast. Regardless, I finish the task of creating what is essentially a meal of toast on butter before walking back to the kitchen and putting the butter back in the cold cupboard. Having made this trip several times in the last few minutes, I'm starting to get tired of it as I once again get back to the table in the base room and lay down in my cushion chair. I almost fall asleep on the spot before thinking about how Mum's too asleep to wake me up, and I'm too busy to sleep all day, so I force myself to continue chewing on my butter with a side of toast until it disappears from my plate. Finally finished with the chore more commonly known as breakfast, I once again collapse into my cushion chair a little less lazily this time. Well, it's still making me want to stay here and sleep, but now I'm aware that I cannot in fact sit here and sleep. I'm too awake to not realize that I actually have to do things in the morning. So after a little more lazing around in my chair, I get up and head for the door to my room. Once inside, I see with a little more clarity the place in which I sleep. Sitting against the wall right in front of me as I enter the room is my bed. It looks a little like a metal pod, except the insides are filled to the brim with cushions. The lid of the pod is open because I just got out of it, meaning that it looks a little like half an egg with a bunch of cushions inside it. Oh, and it has a sort of hatch on its side that looks a little like the ones you see on coaches and space trains. The one that opens a little like a boot or engine flap. The inside of that flap is currently empty as I'm wearing what should be sitting in there, but it's still an interesting feature to mention. Next to the bed is a little table on each side. Neither are particularly large, but they're both square and plastic. The color, by the way, is the same as the pod, an annoyingly glaring white. Not my decision, not that I'm sure I'd know what color I'd want for my bed and bedside tables respectively. Other than that, however, there is very little else, with the exception of a single computer and desk against the right wall. I mean just the computer, by the way. I'm not so ancient as to actually need a monitor anymore, but you can't access the computing power of a computer without the actual computer, so I have to find space for the thing. It's fairly small, but still annoying to find a place for in my relatively small room. Out of the corner of my eye, I spot something else that takes up a fairly large amount of space in my room, but I just ignore it because I rarely use it. It's also something else that is glaringly white, so staring at it is going to cause me some issues in the morning. Regardless, find a space I did, and now it's just sitting there. The computer, I mean, not the annoyingly obvious thing in the corner of my eye. It doesn't have any flashy lights or anything at the moment because it's not on, but when it is though, it could probably light up the whole room for people without night vision, not that I'd know. Regardless, what I'm looking for is on the desk that's above the computer. A metal rod with a thin slit down its side. It's as white as my pod, though it has a more metal tint to it than the plastic of the pod and my bedside tables. That is obviously caused by the fact that it's made of metal. I grab it and once again head out of my room. Finally, taking in the whole base room, I first spot my destination. Right across from my current location is a metal door handle, yellow like most metal door handles with bits of rust or discoloring coming off of it here and there. Fairly normal for a well-used door though. Honestly, with our advancements in technology, you'd expect products to last longer, but nope. You get stuff like this which is utterly useless after a year or two, though we do get it for free, so I guess the government is the one that has to deal with this nonsense for us, which is nice. The handle is attached to a door that's made to mimic the look of wood. You can tell because it's glaringly obvious. I mean, the wood marks are obviously painted on, and the rest of the door is brown with no changes in shade or anything. Wood changes shade, you know? Those idiots who made this door probably didn't care though. Ignoring the door to try and get my mind away from it, I saw the table I was eating at earlier right in the middle of the room. It's actually only slightly ajar to the most straight path towards the door right in front of me, but it's still so obviously notable. That might be because of the lack of anything else notable in the house rather than anything else though. I mean, the doors to my left are all just as fake as the one straight in front of me. 3 of those doors in a row must look pretty surreal. Obviously, I'm poking my head out of one of these doors, so I wouldn't know. Other than those doors, there is nothing else in the room. The walls are all made of seemingly degraded metal, which is in actuality perfectly sturdy, despite how it looks. This time, it's not the manufacturer's fault. The government essentially commissioned them to make as unappealing a house as possible that still satisfies the most basic requirements of a house, and this is what we get. Not to say that I'm not grateful that anyone can live in a house for free, but more that they've been doing it for so long that they've realized giving people food, clothing, and shelter for free sort of takes their motivation to work away, so they've started taking countermeasures, mainly psychological ones. If I didn't know how corrupt the government was, I'd be screaming my head off about how they're essentially brainwashing us with the way ads and stuff are plastered everywhere these days. It's not just that you can't escape them though. No, that would be a fair trade-off for getting everything for free. The problem is the way the ads literally say they are hypnotizing you into buying stuff and working for it. Most of us have developed a sort of brainwashing resistance by this point, and ads don't bother us so much anymore, especially on this planet. There was actually a funny study done where they attempted to brainwash people from various planets to do certain things they normally wouldn't, and our planet was one of the most resistant. The study's results were never publicized on the news or anything, but I looked up the results, and it turned out how many ads were on a planet actually correlated to how resistant they were to brainwashing. Not that the study's results even explicitly stated that. No, I had to work that out on my own from the results. It was a lot of work, honestly, for something I was interested in at the time. I've mellowed out a lot nowadays though, as our species normally does, but still the difference seems to be particularly stark in me. While I've been mulling these things over though, I reached the door on the other side of the room, almost subconsciously. even lost in thought. I'm still doing what I'm supposed to and people call me lazy. Opening the door, I take in the familiar surroundings of my house. A road, some houses. That's it. Fun, right? Oh, how I love watching the scenery outside. The scenery of car pods and people walking around doing stuff that I'm too totally interested in.
It's been so long I didn't see you on mine. You change a lot, you look a different guy.